Hi everyone. Earlier on today, I was reading that Amazon was laying off about 14,000 employees globally, and there were another 30,000 people whose roles could be affected in one way or the other. When you start to hear this kind of news, especially the fact that it's not restricted to Amazon. A couple of days before that, a colleague was talking about something similar going on in Nestle, and you have quite a number of big companies making similar cuts. Now, in some cases, they blame it on AI. They say they're trying to get more lean, they're trying to get more efficient, they're making use of AI. In other cases, they're a bit more transparent. In the past, when we had the tech layoffs in 2022, they had blamed it on overhiring during the pandemic, where they built up a lot of stuff to take care of the increased demand for online services. So they shared a bit of those stuff. But a number of people that were let go in 2022 were not tech people. It wasn't just the programmers that were let go. And the same thing now. People being let go are not necessarily the people whose roles have been replaced by AI. To be honest, we are yet to actually begin to see the real impact of AI use in big corporates. So the way I see it, it's mostly an excuse. What we're experiencing is an economic downturn. I talked about this in a previous video. It's been creeping around for the past couple of years, but it's happening. So on that note, how should you manage your finances? Well, it's simple really. Like I always say, the principles always remain the same. Your application may vary depending on where you are. Now, if your organization is looking at ways to become more lean and efficient, and you feel your role might be under consideration soon, it would help to do a personal self-assessment and see where are you when it comes to your finances. Where are you when it comes to your emergency funds? How long would you last without a job? I think it was Kiyosaki, or maybe it's someone else, that said that the true measure of your wealth is how long you can survive without a job. It's not if you have $1 million in the bank account. No, it's how long without having to clock in to any job, not your own business, not any job at all. How long can you survive? Now, most of us would eventually have to clock in at some point or the other, if not for anything, for the sheer boredom of doing nothing or not having a line manager breathing down your neck. But it's a serious question to consider. How long can you survive without a job? And that really is what you need to be concerned about. Not if your company would lay you off now or later. Because eventually, no one works for any company forever. You will grow old. You will become redundant at some point. Even Warren Buffett, that owned his own business, eventually, he had to retire in his 90s, yes. But at some point, he realized, I need to fire myself from here.
Too old for this shit.
I can't do this anymore. The question is he wealthy enough to continue to maintain his lifestyle without a job? Definitely. Are you? So that's the first thing you need to do. You need to make sure you have an emergency fund, basically. That's the long and short of what I'm saying. Now, if you do have an emergency fund that can last you at least 6 months, from experience, if you're good at what you do, you should get another job in 3. If the economy is bad, it could take longer. I may be wrong. I'm not an economist, but I think the economy might be struggling, and that might be why we're seeing all these cutbacks in employment. So plan for a minimum of 6 months. Now, if you don't have that, you probably can't save up to 6 months of your salary now. But what you can do is plan for a scenario where, what if you don't have a job for 6 months? What cutbacks would you have to do? If your employer is making cutbacks, you might have to. So, are you flexible enough to move somewhere else in the UK? If you're an immigrant here already, you're not tied to anywhere. That's one benefit of an immigrant. You probably don't have serious roots anywhere aside your family. For instance, if your kids are in school, that could affect you. But if you're single or you don't have kids, are you flexible enough to relocate? So if you currently live in London and you lose your job, flexible enough to move to Birmingham, or if you don't like Birmingham, Leeds, Manchester, Those are other cities in UK that could offer you the same perks as London would, but at a lower price. You would probably think, well, all the good jobs are in London, and you'll be right. But the beautiful thing about living in the UK is you have trains, and you have the internet, and steady power supply. You could always do your interviews online. I know people that have applied for jobs, decent jobs, while they were in Nigeria, and they got them and then moved here afterwards. So it's something that can be done if you are in the country already. All right, so you could be in Manchester and keep applying for jobs in London, or you could look for jobs in Manchester. So that's the other thing. So point 1, start building your emergency funds. Point 2, start thinking about the possibilities outside your current circumstances. Now, if you're building up your emergency funds, don't just keep that money in a bank account. Inflation is still relatively high, right? You want to put that money in a high interest savings account. Now, I've made a video on that topic as well. I'll probably link to it in the description of this video on YouTube. You will see links to websites where you can actually check different banks and their current rates, which usually will be better than what you get from your bank. Trust me, it's worth shopping around for where you will keep your emergency funds. Because this is not just your spending money, this is money you want to have set aside, shielded from inflation, in case you do need to dip into it for a period of time. So that's point 3. Now, the other thing I would like to talk about is that in a period like this, you may be tempted to look at your investments, right? This year has been particularly good for stocks. I have people calling me and saying, oh, they listen to some of my other videos and their portfolio is doing well. Again, I'm not your financial advisor, but you need to pay attention to this. In some cases, the stock market and the economy don't always talk to each other. There are times when the market will keep booming while the economy is dipping. There are times when it's the inverse. The economy is doing great, the market is dipping. Because the market is not necessarily responding to today. It's responding to the future. Prices today are a reflection of the expectation that the stock market has of the future. You don't need to think about that too much. But the point is, don't worry yourself about what's happening in the stock market and don't be tempted to sell. The whole essence of an emergency fund is just to reduce your need for dipping into your investments. Because the easiest way to interrupt a growing portfolio is selling because you feel you've made some money. You need to allow your portfolio to go through the ups and downs and ups and downs. The longer your portfolio can stay untouched, the more returns you make in the long term. But then again, if there is a real need, don't say, the best told you not to spend your money, it's your money. If there's a desperate need and you need to dip into it, it's just that you need to realize what the trade-off is. You're losing opportunity. Now, one other thing that happens to people I don't know why, but it does. Like, history has shown, when times are hard, people tend to take ridiculous risks. They tend to gamble a bit when times are hard. Maybe it's the idea of, I have nothing else to lose, right? Try to resist this urge, because there's nothing worse than losing the little you have to things like crypto or some speculative scheme. So please resist the urge. That's the 5th and the last point. So I hope you found this helpful. These are just some thoughts I had while mulling over what has happened with Amazon and what could also happen to some of us, yours truly included. So if maybe in the next video you noticed I've changed my background, perhaps I've had to relocate to Manchester. It's a decent place, I have friends there. Anyhow, if you like this video, if you found it helpful, please leave a comment below and like the video. But for now, remember, we don't just want to keep the gist flowing, we want to get our money growing. At the end of the day, what you do is more important than what I talk about in these videos. Have a lovely day. Cheers.